Hello, I'm Jeff McNeil, and this is my review of Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age. As an unnamed youth from the village of Cobblestone, you are the Luminary, a reincarnation of the hero Eldrick, who defeated the forces of darkness many years before. Gathering your allies and traveling across the land, you once again face monsters, demons, and the armies of darkness in order to fulfill your destiny. Dragon Quest XI's story is as Dragon Quest as it can get. While the series has always been a bastion of classic RPG stories, Dragon Quest XI really does do nothing other than just wallow in the classic ideas, in the classic characters, classic world, classic storytelling, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. The story is perfectly serviceable, and even if there are no real surprises, there are plenty of moments within the game that are quite enjoyable to experience. But this is not a story for everyone. If you're looking for something new, something fresh, something interesting, you are not going to find it here. Everything here is so textbook that even if you're not familiar with the Dragon Quest series, you'll be able to tell exactly who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, where every aspect of the story is going long before it's ever revealed. And unfortunately, the game does have a few other story issues. One major issue is that your character is the central focus of the story. As the Luminary, you are the only one the forces of darkness fear. None of your other party members, no army, no force in the world is any concern to them. You are the only one that can actually do anything. And that basically means you're the only one who's important to the story. Your party members, the people you meet, it's all inconsequential. Everything exists solely for you. In fact, out of all the party members that join you, every single one of them basically swears on their life that they will die for you.
Did I do all right?
Yeah, they might have their own motivations, but it all boils down to, we can only do our stuff if you succeed, so we'll die for you. And it is really boring when one character is literally the focus of everything. And to make it worse, he, and it can only be a he, is a silent protagonist. While that is basically a staple of the Dragon Quest series, it's never been a situation where the focus has been so heavily on one character. And this leads to a lot of really unpleasant moments where I wish my character could do something, that they could say something, that they would respond in some manner instead of having someone else talk to them. Because everyone else has their own problems in the story, but everything focuses on you. And you're a blank slate. You do nothing. But unfortunately, even that is not the end of the story's issues. Because despite the fact that the story focuses on you, that you are central to everything, it's not your story. You are not the hero of the story. You are not the main aspect of this world. The original Eldrick and his party is. All you're doing is just doing what they did. The game's title really does say it all. You're an echo. Everything you do from the very beginning of the game to the very last scene in the entire game is literally the original Eldrick. All you're doing is just following along behind them. Is there a magic barrier that you need to get past? Well, you better believe you're not going to figure out a way to do it. You're just going to do what the original Eldrick did. Do you need a legendary weapon? Well, the original Eldrick sword is the only weapon that'll do. Even the final action you do in the game is just doing what they did after they finished their journey. You're just following other characters. You're the main part of the story. You're the main focus of the story, but it's not your story.
Did I do all right?
I mean, even the outfit I'm wearing, it's one of the best uniforms you can wear in the game for the main character. That's Eldrick's equipment. I'm using Eldrick's swords. The girl on the left, she's wearing Serenica's outfit. She was Eldrick's basically love interest. The best equipment in the game is just Eldrick's. Everything is just Eldrick's. The best techniques, they belong to Eldrick. There are quests you get that boost your stats, and it's about finding Eldrick's items. This is not your story. You're just following more interesting people's stories. And it's just awful. The fact your character doesn't speak, the fact that the story focuses so much on them, the fact it's not your story, and the fact that it's just so plain and boring and uninteresting. It's just... This is not a story that appealed to me at all. I didn't like the storytelling. I don't like the focus on the original character, Eldrick. Some people are going to like this. If you're looking for a very, very classic, traditional RPG, you're going to find it here. But if you want anything really interesting, anything unique, anything with any real passion or guts to it, you are not going to find it here. You're just going to have a copy of every other Dragon Quest game. And it's not a story I can get behind. Graphically, the game is easily the best looking Dragon Quest game. It takes advantage of the PS4's more advanced hardware to allow larger environments, better details, more animations, better physics. Magic, spells, all that stuff looked better than it's ever looked before. Though, once again, this is a game that basically revels in its own history. Many of the monsters you've seen before. Most of the NPCs that you encounter in the game, you've seen before. They're still using character designs from like Dragon Quest VIII or earlier. I mean, Dragon Quest VIII was what, 15 years ago, back on the PS2? And they're still using NPC designs. I mean, I understand the certain timelessness that the Dragon Quest series has, but it wouldn't hurt them to maybe try and do something a little new. That said, it runs fairly smoothly. I haven't had any major issues. There's no real pop-in, and it visually does look nice enough. It's not going to blow anyone away, but it definitely maintains the Dragon Quest art style while taking advantage of more advanced hardware. Sound is rough. Music is, once again, it's just old Dragon Quest stuff. You're dealing with music that's been in this series for years and years and years and years. There's just so little here that's unique or new or interesting. And once again, we run into some issues where music doesn't match the situation. I'm just gonna zoom here real quick. This is a monk shrine. This is a late game area, and it's basically a Shaolin temple. So this is, when you think Shaolin Temple, you're thinking peaceful music, you know, meditative stuff. No. No. We get the Dragon Quest VIII castle music. Well, not castle, this is the holy central land thing. But once again, this is music from Dragon Quest VIII, which was 15 years ago, give or take. I mean, come on. It's not orchestrated. The music is just a lot of recycling with nothing new, nothing interesting, nothing that sets it apart from any other Dragon Quest game. You put this Dragon Quest soundtrack against any other Dragon Quest game, and it'll just blend in. I mean, that's fine, once again, if you're looking for something very traditional, very fitting with the Dragon Quest series. But if you're looking for anything beyond that, the soundtrack is not going to do it for you. And even if you are looking for Dragon Quest, you're not going to find new Dragon Quest here. This is just revel in the old stuff again. Voices, there is some good voices in the game, and there are a few characters I genuinely like.
Goodness.
Not everything's a winner, not all of it is fantastic. Sound effects, they're still using 8-bit sound effects for spells and musical cues when saving. It's all still there. If you've played one Dragon Quest game, you've played this game's soundtrack. You know it. You know the sound effects, you know the attack animations. It's all here. It's not offensive in any way. It's just boring. That's the best way I can describe the soundtrack. It's boring. Gameplay is, once again, very traditional RPG.
Wonderful.
But it does change things up in a very positive manner. This is not a purely turn-based RPG as it has been in previous Dragon Quest games. In previous games, what you did during battle is you would choose all your commands at the beginning of the turn, and actions would play out but based on characters at speed stat. So character A would attack, enemy A would attack. Everything was set in order. And everything was basically preloaded. That does not happen in Dragon Quest VIII. You do not set your commands ahead of time. You set your commands right when you're going to perform your attack. So, if a character needs healing, you don't need to guess if they need healing, if your healer is going to waste their magic spell or not. Now, this means that it's much easier to control your characters in positive ways. You can much more easily decide when you're going to use moves, how you're going to use moves, and be able to react to situations rather than guessing what the enemies are going to do. This also means that you don't need to rely upon the auto commands nearly as much, since that was the advantage that they had in previous games. For example, if you set your healer to heal automatically and you don't have any control, they will change their actions when they need to. So if in the middle of a turn a character takes damage, your healer will heal them if they haven't had their turn yet. This means that it was actually smarter to have certain characters acting automatically even during bosses, just because they would respond to situations immediately. Now that's totally in your control, which is great. Absolutely fantastic. The other game's big system is the PEP system, which is similar to the Psych-Up system from Dragon Quest VIII, but at the same time it's a little better, but also a little worse. There's no way outside of the main character to deliberately I guess, deliberately go into a pumped up state. It happens when you take damage or under certain circumstances. But Pep Up increases a character's individual stats based on that character, and gives them access to unique combination abilities. Some of these are just adding a spell to an attack, and others are much more dramatic displays containing powerful and awesome effects. I'm not totally sure whether I prefer the Psych Up system or the Pep Up system a little more. Pep Up is probably more powerful than Psych Up, but far less controlled. If you're wanting to use specific Psych Up abilities, you need to play with a character in battle till they Psych Up, and then you remove them from your party, because Psych Up will remain after battle, and will last for a couple turns. So it is up in the air which system you prefer. Psych Up is more powerful. Combination attacks are really fun and interesting to watch, but it's nowhere near as controlled as Psych Up. Characters have access to a variety of different skills and abilities that improve as you level up. You can put skill points into different abilities. Very similar to Dragon Quest VIII, but you're not putting individual points into different traits, but rather you unlock these grids which each have a corresponding cost. So Metal Slash here, for example, requires 12 points. I have 13 points, so I can get Metal Slash. You're not putting in, 2 or 3 points per level and eventually unlocking skills. Another major aspect is crafting, which returns from earlier Dragon Quest games. Though, once again, this is another system that's both better and worse. Instead of using like an alchemy pot, you use a little blacksmith bench, which allows you to craft a whole bunch of unique and powerful items. But this is limited only to equipment. You can't make consumables anymore. But the Fun Size Forge lets you make a whole bunch of different weapons. But once again, little issue, you're not making weapons from other weapons, like in Dragon Quest VIII. So you don't start with like a bronze sword and then eventually turn it into an iron sword, into a steel sword, into a flame sword. Everything requires individual ingredients. And once you get the proper ingredients, you do a little mini game in which you can give it up to +3 in stats. So at +3, it gains much higher stats than normal. So crafted items are inherently better than anything you can buy in the shops. See, I just made a +3 bronze sword, which is significantly better than anything you can buy, than any bronze sword you can buy. This means you will end up with huge, massive amounts of money just sitting in your bank. Like, I barely touched any shop throughout the game. I kept putting money in the bank. I finished the game with like 500,000 gold in the bank, just because there was nothing to spend it on. I mean, the only thing I would occasionally buy would be crafting ingredients. But, all the equipment you make or you find is just better than what you can buy. The only things you can't buy are some costume pieces. And even then it's nothing. Overall, Dragon Quest game is a return to classic Dragon Quest gameplay, storytelling, music, and design. But unfortunately, it's done so little new over the past couple decades that the seams are beginning to show, and its age is beginning to become apparent. It's not a bad game at all, and if you are looking for a classic traditional JRPG, You will not find a better example than Dragon Quest XI, Dragon Quest XI. But if you're looking for anything new from the series, you are not going to find it. This is just every other Dragon Quest game. This has been Jeff McNeil. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time.